Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She comes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Coming to you on Thursday, November 11th, LA Galaxy. Guess what? Still out of the playoffs. I know it's too soon for that, but guess what? We're into like opening the wounds today, pouring salt in there, rubbing them around a little bit. It's just one of those weeks, one of those days. Almost a Friday. I think that's good news for everybody. If you're really excited about the big news today, and this is big news, Taylor Swift's album drops in about like an hour, probably East Coast time, midnight. So we're very close to that. The Red Album, my favorite. We can talk actually, it's an hour-long show just about that. So get ready for Taylor Swift talk. Let's see. We're going to have some roster talk. We're going to start breaking into that, some off-season stuff, some other little things that we're going to throw in there, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of discussion to help me do all that. He's back. It's the Hammer himself, Mr. Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira. How's it going, Eric?
It's going all right, all things considered. Obviously, this is supposed to be the playoff hype show. We're supposed to be getting excited for the international break and the playoffs coming, and obviously... Man, that was a rough letdown over the weekend. So we'll see if we can pick up all the pieces. Usually, one thing I can count on when Pato and the Hammer get together on Thursday night, we're going long. But I think you said it with the Taylor Swift album dropping. I think I might get the boot pretty quickly. So yeah. So we're on a time crunch. No playoffs, no games to talk about. Taylor Swift's coming out. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, it was funny. The chat room's already like, "Hey, don't hold out on transfer rumors." Playoffs? You want to talk about the playoffs? No, there's none of that yet. There's none of that. There was some roster stuff that sort of came up as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. I've been talking to the Galaxy. I've been trying to figure out what their schedule is. They were supposed to be in today training Thursday, Friday. There's some CBA stuff that sort of says that they have to train past a certain time and then they're done. And I think most Galaxy fans are used to that, because that's what the LA Galaxy have been doing now for multiple years outside of 2019 when they actually made the playoffs. They have been having to train after everybody else gets ready for the playoffs. 14 teams getting ready for the playoffs. The LA Galaxy aren't one of them, which is always fun and exciting. I just, before we get too far, we spent some time on a Monday show and Kevin got a chance, but we also wanted to give another shout out to the man himself, Mr. Esquire, Larry. I think I call him Larry F. Morgan Esquire. I don't think the F is actually his middle initial.
He needs like a third in there. Larry S. Morgan Esquire the fourth. I think that really cements it.
Yeah, I agree. So we have to figure out, Sir Larry Morgan Esquire, I think is probably what it is. But it was fun because you tossed up some pictures certainly and did some things. But somebody threw out a picture of Larry that was from 30 years ago or something like that.
I think you just scrolled past it. It was a classic.
Yeah, it's a very good one. Larry says, he goes, "That was a long time ago. I was much skinnier then." Larry's not skinny. Larry's a tall drink of water.
And also, I will say, Larry, being modest, if you told me that picture was taken, if you take the guy in the back with the wide tie and the glasses from 1989 or 1991, I think that's the era that picture is from. Take that guy out of it. I think if you told me that was Larry 4 weeks ago, I would buy it. I would buy it. Larry has aged very well. So
he's got that salt and pepper hair.
Absolutely.
I think Larry could do some damage on if indeed he was single. But of course he's got Mrs. Not on Twitter as well. So of course. She's there. So they're gonna have a good time. Listen, I want everybody to know it's not like Larry suddenly stopped texting me. As a matter of fact, Larry has been texting me more in the last couple of days than ever. So it's fine. I think I'm trying to get him to come over and help me put some models together that maybe I need to work on. Yeah.
I was gonna say we're in the off season. No games to talk about it. You got your train set going. I think if you put Larry's World War II planes, trains.
They're
I think
they're different eras. We already talked about this. He was trying to force
scales,
it on me.
The ratios aren't
That's
right.
not right. It's not right.
But I know you guys had a chance to talk to him and kind of give your farewell, not really farewell, but congratulations in order. So I just want to take the time to do that as well.
Can I interrupt? Every time we talk about him, we're always like, did he die? It's
yet.
like, no, he's not yet.
Yet.
He's fine. I just talked to him. He is good. Okay, go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So shout out to Larry. I know I came in later in the fold. I know he's been around for all those years, but every time I got together with Larry, hearing him share stories about, the Aztecs and his Cleveland sports stories, just always a pleasure to talk to, and just the wealth of knowledge that he brought and the help that he gave, with my little dalliances on the website with writing a few features here and there. And I know he gave some input, and some of that input was through you to me and, directly to him. So again, a huge influence here on Corner of the Galaxy. So shout out to him. Enjoy the retirement, enjoy the grandkids, enjoy the golf, enjoy all the pretzels you wish. So so enjoy it, Larry. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I'm sure our paths will cross again.
We should take Larry golfing.
That'd be fun.
Okay, good. I would, except you live in a different state now. And by the way, I would like to point out, several people have pointed this out. Both states that you live in don't have any teams in the playoffs.
Correct.
And so they're blaming you, and I agree.
And I mentioned it when we had our Twitter spaces at the end, but I take full responsibility. This is on me, 100% on me. No California teams, no Texas teams. God's a mean person, and so I decided to move away from California, and this is his way to punish me. I'm not even going to get to sniff any playoffs, any MLS playoffs, either in Texas nor California. So I'm going to have to figure out a different way to get my MLS playoff fix. So I apologize. My apologies to everyone. That's on me.
It was absolutely there. By the way, Raphael, I think, hit it on the head. Looking forward to the future show where Larry unretires. I'm on that train, by the way. I'm on that train. I think Larry is doing what I would expect that I kind of want to do right now, which is like, please don't make me talk about this for a little while, because it was a ridiculous season. And one is, I can't believe it's over. And two is, it should be over because it was the longest thing I've ever been a part of. I think it's lasted longer than both my marriages this season. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true.
You're going to get in trouble.
No, neither one of them listen to the show. I'm not too concerned about it. So
also a fair point.
Yes. So anyway, so that's where we are. But yeah, it was great. By the way, Mike gave us a $10 super chat. Hey, Mike, how's it going? Mike.
Shout out to Mike.
Yeah. He says Larry has aged like a fine wine. Indeed, he has. So anyway, Larry, I'm sure we will talk about him this entire offseason. So whenever it comes back around to the beginning, he'll be ready to go and rock and rolling in the press box. So
he's going to be here for the home opener preview show. That's going to be the Larry show. You just know it. You know it.
People are saying, make sure you still have Larry back on the podcast. I'll gladly do that. So don't worry. He's hanging it up, but he's not really he's just fading to black, right? He's fading to black. It's not black yet. You can still see a picture there. So Larry's doing just fine. That also sounds like he's dying. He's fine. As far as I know, he's fine.
He just doesn't want to deal with it anymore. If he wants to, he can, but he's not committing. So I like that style. So, I'll jump in and out as needed.
Can we talk about the chat room and feel the berm, by the way, because he's over here dropping Taylor Swift lyrics into this, and it was a sad, beautiful, tragic love affair, and I'm ready to cry already. And apparently there's a 10-minute version of a song that I'm waiting. Anyway, we don't need to talk about Taylor Swift. Let's talk a little bit about MLS and why not. That sounds like fun. The big news that broke about, an hour before we started talking was that Peter Vermeez got fined. Normally we wouldn't talk about another coach getting fined, except his mouth was all over the Galaxy while he was doing it. And very nicely, I should say, went to bat for the LA Galaxy. This was obviously the blown handball called in the RSL game. RSL handled the ball in the 90th minute in the box. Pro came out and basically said, yeah, we were wrong. We screwed that one up. And then that was all that happened to them.
That's
and then Peter Vermeez got fined for saying, well, really, okay, listen, let me start by this, and this will probably surprise people and everybody. Peter Vermeez deserves to be fined for what he said. That's fine. He knew going in, he was going to be fined for what he said. It probably wasn't I've never seen a call as bad as this, because it was a really bad call. It was probably I'm embarrassed to be part of this league stuff that got him fined, because you're not really allowed to talk about the league badly in your post games and stuff like that. So he should be fined. That he knew it was coming. Peter will be fined, that type of thing. It is super, super hypocritical for MLS to come in here and say anything to Peter Vermeez about that, because he was 100% accurate on all the stuff that he did. And because of that, you really get to think. I was listening to some other people that were talking about this, Eric. It's not just that the Galaxy missed the playoffs. And let's be clear, you and I were talking about this beforehand. The Galaxy had enough points to get in the playoffs. We just talked about this. They technically had enough points to get in the playoffs.
Do we want to dig into that, or let me tie a bow back on Peter Vermeez?
No, let's flow.
But back to Vermeez, I think you're right. He knew the fine was probably coming, but at the same time, he didn't say anything incorrect. But when you start bashing the league, we've seen that that's the rules. That's the way it's set up. So that's one thing to go. So now here's where the issue is. Pro came out and said that it was the incorrect call. They whatever. I don't know if it was an apology or they just acknowledged that it was incorrect. Right. So now the question is, does the referee get fined for not looking at it? Does the VAR referee get fined? So is there consistency here? If you're finding Vermeez for pointing it out, then, do you fine the referees for making those errors and costing those judges? The answer is no. But I think it's just one of those things where you bring that up. Is there a consequence for this referee? Does he miss out on games? Doesn't get to officiate in the playoffs, so maybe he loses out on a bit of a paycheck by losing a number of games. So is there a consequence? Because I think all we want is consistency as fans, is to say, listen, if there's a mistake, what's going to happen? I think this has happened. It happened in the UFC, I think a week ago, or I think a week ago there was an event in Dubai. A referee just let the fight go on for a little bit too long, and as soon as the match was over, you got the call. This ref is not doing any more matches that night. He was pulled from the card, and so I think fans, obviously, it was upsetting to watch the guy. This is dealing with people's health and people getting with concussions and everything going on. In UFC being a brutal sport, it's bad enough already. But then now fans said, okay, well, this guy was pulled for the card. You get that piece that, okay, something was done about it. And I think if MLS came out and said there was an error, this referee will not be officiating games for the first round of the playoffs or something like that, I think that's one way to kind of make things right. If you're going to be consistent and you're going to fine Vermeez for saying that, then come out and give the punishment on the other direction as well. So that's just my 2 cents on the Vermeez fine. They
should be relegated. They should only be allowed to do Eastern Conference games from here on out. Yeah, I mean, you'd like for something. Here's so it's always difficult, because I always get people who are saying it doesn't matter, the Galaxy shouldn't have left it to blah blah blah. We're going to acknowledge that at the front, and we've acknowledged that many times. The Galaxy had plenty of times to get just one more point anywhere would have got them into the playoffs. One more point anywhere at any time. Don't allow as many goals, goal differential, that type of thing would have gotten them in. All these different things you look at would have gotten them in. Acknowledged. However, if the call is made correctly on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, the LA Galaxy are in the playoffs right now. How much does that change things for the LA Galaxy? Drastically. And I don't think so. First of all, players and contracts and things like that. That whenever you make it to the playoffs, a lot of times there's bonuses for making it to the playoffs. A lot of times there's incentives for making or doing stuff in the playoffs, minutes in the playoffs, score goals in the playoffs. Winning a Western Conference would give you more money. Not saying the Galaxy are in that, but they had the potential to get there, and now they don't, right? And so that's just the base level of players and coaches and everything else. And Greg Vanney's life is a lot easier if he makes the playoffs, because he did, and they set about their goal to make it. So a lot of these things come in. I'll tell you right now, fans listening and complaining about stuff about the Galaxy not making the playoffs have less of an argument to complain about if the Galaxy make the playoffs. That is something that ripples through everything, Eric. Season ticket renewals ripples through those. Merchandising ripples through that. There's a lot of things that can change. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even into the millions of dollars the LA Galaxy missed out on because they didn't make the playoffs.
And to even further that point, I think we're getting into that territory where, if my aunt, was born with different parts, she'd be my uncle. And it's like, okay, at what point do we just go too far in the other direction? But if we're going to keep going in that direction, the Galaxy heading into decision day the week before that had a result in Portland gone differently. Julian Narajo doesn't, score an own goal. So maybe you take one tiny little element like that. Then they manage to get 3 points. Portland doesn't manage to make those jumps. And then we're talking about a home playoff game. So then you're talking about revenue at home and all those different things. So just one of those little things to go a different direction. And of course, instead of talking about, not missing the playoffs altogether, we could be talking about a home playoff game, which would be something completely different. So it's even crazier when you can even take it further back than that. But to your point, I think, missing the playoffs, and I've seen it a lot on Twitter. I've even seen it a little bit in the chat. Now, it goes back to, well, falls on Chris Klein out, the way the team was structured. If there was an issue with the way the team was structured, there was an issue with the way the team was structured before they missed the playoffs. So if you had an issue and you wanted Klein out, before that, then the Klein out should have never gone away, which to be fair, I think a lot of people have felt that way, regardless of the team you put together. Klein out's just your position because you think he's worn out his welcome. And I think if people feel that way, I think they have the right to feel that way. Mm-hmm. And so that's fine. But you can't say because they missed the playoffs, because, Julian Narajo had an own goal, because the missed handball call, now I want Klein out. I don't think that's the right motivation to do it. So maybe it sparks that interest and it keeps it going, but it could have bounced a few different ways. But to go back to what we were talking about before, did the Galaxy deserve to make the playoffs? I was ready to come on and to make the take and to say, you know what? The Galaxy didn't deserve to make the playoffs, because you look at the teams above them. You had Vancouver, who had 15 out of 24 points. They took away 62.5% of their points. They had who else we have? Minnesota had 12 out of 24 points. They took 50% of their points. The Galaxy only had 10 out of 21, so they had less than 50%. So I was saying they didn't deserve to make it. But then you look at RSL. And RSL, if I were to ask you, and I think you know the answer, but if I were to ask you, out of 21 points, how many points do you think RSL took in their October and November?
Yeah, I said like 14 or 15, didn't I?
14 or 15. Yeah. They took 9 points. So they actually did worse than the Galaxy in the final 7 games of the season than the Galaxy did. So it ended up being them tied on points. So I was going to say, well, RSL deserved to do it. But really where it came down to is RSL beat Colorado and RSL beat SKC. And the LA Galaxy can't say that they did that this season. Right. And so I think that's what it comes down to. When they needed to beat the big opponents, they did that. Unfortunately, the Galaxy couldn't beat the little opponents either. But they also couldn't take away points from the people on the top of the table. So in the end of the day, I think they are who we thought they were. They landed exactly what they were supposed to land because they didn't do a good enough job either, earlier in the season or later in the season. The 9-game winless streak, they didn't get it done. So yeah, you could say they didn't deserve to make it. Absolutely. But they put themselves in the situation and, had a bounce gone their different way, they would have gone in. And so maybe they wouldn't have deserved to get in, however you say that. The situation was where it was. They landed where they landed, and they earned where they landed. It is. I wouldn't look at this team and say, well, they deserved more. I don't think so. I don't think they played like they deserved more. I think they played to earn exactly what they needed to earn. If they deserved more, we would have seen more from them when it counted most.
I mean, the counterpoint to, hey, RSL beat SKC and they beat these bigger teams was that means they lost more points to the bad teams than probably even the Galaxy did, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you can always balance that out. I do take issue, though, with people who said, oh, well, this team didn't improve that much. And I think that because we had a short season last year of 22 games, because it was a COVID season, it was messed up, that we have forgotten how horrible that season was and how uninviting it was to watch the LA Galaxy play, and how this year, at no point did the LA Galaxy, I would say, play this uninviting, unintelligent soccer. Sometimes they were learning things, and you could see the learning taking place on the field sometimes. But I felt like there was a purpose. I felt like there was a reason. I felt like there was strategy behind the things. And I don't think Greg Vanney got it right, and I sort of likened it to this. Well, yeah, okay. I'll sort of liken it to this, which is whenever I got in my car, like whenever I got a new car, I got in my new car, and it was a lot bigger than my old car, and so I had to drive it around for a little while, and like I couldn't go through drive-thrus because I was like, oh my god, this car is big and it's hard to fit into spaces. Now, after being in that car for a year, 2 years, I'm comfortable in that car. I know what the car is. I know where things are. I understand the car much better than in the first year that I had it. The second and third years, I understood it. So I think that Greg Vanney was making the mistakes that you sort of would expect to make whenever you have something new that you're trying to figure out how it works. And there's no instruction manual for a soccer team. So I'm willing to let them make mistakes and do that. Now, here's the deal is, people want to say, and they want to compare, and it's okay to do it, but I just think it lacks perspective, which is, well, let's compare, Greg Vanney's last 22 games to Guillermo Barros-Schelotto's 22 games in 2020. Yes, except that you had a coach who was in his second year coaching a team that looked completely lost and out of their element for the entire season. So they're not the same things, apples and oranges for me.
And you had a 2-month pause and then a bubble and then a return and then no fans. There are all these different variables. I don't think you can compare them. So my devil's advocate piece of this is you look at 2020 and you say, well, that's a mulligan. You throw it away. You compare 2021 to 2019. Mm-hmm. And so I think that might be what some people are doing. And with that, not missing the playoffs is a regression from that. But I also think you can't fully discount 2020 because it cost a coach's job. The play was so bad. They were still playing games. There were still players on that roster who were either part of the 2019 team or the 2021 team. So there was some consistency there. So there is some comparison. So you do need to, you can't throw it out completely. You do need to factor it in that their play last season, was atrocious and there was an improvement this year. The other thing that I'll push back on you on is, when we saw the Galaxy play, they played with purpose. They played with strategy. We saw what the intent was. And I think there were games where that was the case, but I think there were also games where the Galaxy looked lost. Now, was that a personnel issue? Was that how Vanney set them up? Where does that fall? But I think where good teams really, make their money in this league is being consistent. And the Galaxy were not consistent. I think there were games where there were flashes, where they looked great. They were, creating a lot of chances. Even during that unbeaten run, there were games where they looked really good. They were creating chances. It just the bounces didn't go their way. But there were also games where they got ran off the field by teams. And so you can't have that. You can't have moments. You don't win the season in moments. You win the game consistently being good every single game. That's what, Bruce Arena and the New England Revolution did. That's what Robin Fraser and the Colorado Rapids did. These are what those top teams did. They showed up for every game and they gave you a consistent performance every game. And the Galaxy can't say that they did that. And so for that reason, I'm out, or they're out. So that was my Shark Tank. That was my Shark Tank. I've been around Mark Cuban too much here in Dallas.
You hang out with him all the time. Is that it? Yeah. It sounds like it.
Yeah. You know how I roll.
The LA Galaxy, if you did their points per game in 2020, they would have gotten 34 points. All right. So if it was all the way through 34 games, they were 1 point per game in 2020. Okay. So that means they are 14 points better this year. That's 4 wins and 2 draws better than they were last year if you even everything out.
If you're doing a direct comparison.
If you're doing a direct comparison, that's what you were 14 points better. The 54 goals allowed by the LA Galaxy in 2021 was the best defense they've had since 2016. Now, you can say that's horrible. In 2016, by the way, they had 39 goals, just to understand how drastic that changes whenever you get there. Okay? In 2020, we projected 71 goals against. Again, it was a 22-game season, 34-game season, right? So 71 goals against, which would have been by far the worst season and worst defense the Galaxy have ever had.
And you know what the craziest thing about that? That number sounds ridiculous. And you think, well, there's no way they would have kept that pace. But then I remember being in the stadium and seeing some of those games. They absolutely could have kept that pace and allowed 71 goals. So I don't put it past them. So yeah, the fact that, and I know you guys talked about it on Monday's show as well, but the fact that this was the best defense, it was an extremely low bar. So yes, it is an improvement, but they still had a negative goal differential. And
absolutely.
So you can't say it was a great defensive season. It was an improvement, sure. But, it's an improvement like a piece of bubble gum, out of the wrapper is an improvement than a piece of bubble gum that's been stuck under a table for 2 years. Yeah, it's better, but, it doesn't make it fantastic.
No, but okay, so let's take it to the next sort of step on that, right? And I'm sort of going through different things as I'm looking at. I basically use all of the charts and everything as like my PowerPoint for this, so I just switch between them whenever I'm trying to find stuff. But if you would say, so the Galaxy were 17 goals better, that's a huge improvement, right? So basically,
right.
So and you sit there and go, okay, that's a huge improvement, that's good, and that's the direction you want to. If the Galaxy get 10 goals better, Eric, 10 goals better next year than they were this year, so they allowed 54. And if they allow 44, they would have a top 10 defense in Major League Soccer. I want you to understand that it's not that far away whenever you start bunching things together. They would be a top 10 defense in MLS.
or if we're looking strictly at goal differential, if other players besides Javier Chicharito Hernandez contribute 10 more goals, where does that put them in the standings as far as goals for? If they had 10 more, they'd have 60. So I think only New England would had more than 60 goals per game this season. So maybe it's not the goals for isn't going to erase the difference. So you're right. The where it needs to improve is on the defensive end. Allowing 10 fewer goals. They're again not that far away, but it's still an area where they need to improve. They're not there yet. It's not fixed yet.
The goal differential in 2020 was -19 in a short season. Okay. Again, I want to put this stuff so you can look at.
It's embarrassing when you read those numbers.
It is, but I'm also saying that it's not that hard to figure out that if you have a returning, and listen, this is a big question, and it's not a question I have an answer for, and it's not one that I think even Greg Vanney. But if you return a defense that understands what they're trying to do, with some cohesion, same people playing, and I know people are like, no, you got to get an all new defense. No, you don't. No, first of all, the contracts say no, you don't, because that's probably not going to happen. But you're going to have guys like Jalen Neal possibly coming up as well. So there's going to be this competition in there, and you possibly might lose somebody like Dan Steres, and we'll talk about that here in a second as well. But you can do things and shade things around where there's still some consistency in there. I think Derek Williams has shown enough that you're like, okay, so he's probably my starting center back next year. Who's he going to be paired with?
He's not lights out, and he doesn't make you feel 100% comfortable, but out of all of the center backs we have, I feel the most comfortable with Derek Williams back there. And I like the point that you made with Jalen Neal. He was, again, I think people forget, he was signed to the first team this season. And in the preseason, he was asked to fill in some of those spot gaps. And I think his soccer mind is there. So I think that is, if we're looking into the future, that could be a center back of the future. And he kind of is filling in that former, Dan Steres, Dave Romney role where you're pulling in the guy from G2 to kind of fill that in, which is something the Galaxy have done in the past. So that kind of fits. So I think that is an area where you can't say that consistency is coming. And we've also had this conversation a bunch of times that people say, well, they need to fix the defense. They need to fix the defense. But at the same time, they've been trying to fix the defense. It just hasn't worked. They keep buying defenders. They keep bringing in defenders. They keep bringing in outside backs and center backs. This is, so to say, oh, they need to fix it. I think they've been trying to fix it. It just hasn't been working. So if you're saying they need to fix it, they're trying to fix it. It's just not working. They're swinging and missing. So I think that's the difference. If they're not bringing in center defenders and they're just sticking what they got and saying, deal with it, I think that's a different conversation. But they are trying to bring guys in. They brought Koulibaly in, after the season started. So they were making these moves. So they're trying. I think they're swinging and missing.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. By the way, I was looking at the points. So if the Galaxy got 14 points better than 2020, if they get 14 points better this next season, again, that's asking a lot. All right, that's another 4 wins and 2 draws. Whenever you think about it, that's a significant amount. They would have won the Western Conference with that. Yeah. So again, the number of points is not that far. Whenever you start trying to look at where it is, and I agree with you. The LA Galaxy hit and missed all season, and there was inconsistency. I would certainly say there was a consistency in effort, and I know people will argue against that. I think they got their game plans wrong sometimes, and I think that certainly helped. And Greg Vanney was usually the first one to raise his hand whenever that would happen. And say, hey, we got that wrong, and that's why we had to work so hard, and that's why we weren't in position to sort of do those different things. So the biggest deal for me in the defense looking forward for next year is what they're going to do in the midfield, because the midfield has been horrible since Nigel de Jong left. Would that be...
That's fair.
That's probably fair, right? I mean, Jonathan Dos Santos came in 2017, right? We know that Jonathan Dos Santos, and listen, nothing is for sure, but we are fairly certain the LA Galaxy and Jonathan Dos Santos are going to go their separate ways. Yeah,
and I think, to your point, going back to when the Galaxy's midfield has been, bad since Nigel de Jong, I think I'm trying to think in my head who have been the midfielders that have been kind of holding it down in the middle. And when you're pining for Fabio Alvarez, and you're saying, wow, remember when we have Fabio?
Jermaine Jones?
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Remember those days? I thought he was fine, but when he's I'm thinking the Rolodex in my head, that's the name that stands out. That's a bad sign. So you're right. That the improvement needs to come in the middle, because you've been preaching this. Credit to you, but you've been preaching it all season. The defense doesn't necessarily need to improve with the defenders. It needs to improve with, the midfielders who are going to cover. And I think what we've seen this season with Raveloson and with Dos Santos, I think they're redundant. I think they do the same thing. And so when they're on the field at the same time, they cancel each other out.
They
they
shouldn't be, by the way. Jonathan Dos Santos should be a box-to-box guy, and Raveloson should be less, but he's not. Exactly.
He's not. Exactly. And Raveloson also, what he was doing at the beginning of the season, he also liked to, he ended up in the end of the season dribbling into a lot of feet, and that's something that, with what that is a product of, I don't know if that's just something we didn't notice at the beginning or that's just who he is. But, he didn't have that same spark later on in the season. And for whatever reason, but him and Dos Santos, no one decided to be the attacking player. They both just kind of sat back, but neither of them was defensive either.
Which is why Vasquez was so important, right? I mean, think about this. If you can get a 10 that'll sit in front of Raveloson and you just let Raveloson be the 6, even be an 8, I'll be fine with Raveloson being an 8.
That's where I picture him, yes.
Behind a 10. And by the way, I don't know if we need to say this, but I think we should, because I don't want to be these guys who are like, oh yeah, but a 6 is a more defensive midfielder, right? So your primary goal there is Nigel de Jong is a 6, right? Perry Kitchen would have been a 6.
I see that in the chat. That's a guy who a destroyer, break things up.
People were so ready to ship him out, and he was a guy who you were like, that's somebody you can put minutes on in the center of the field and let him be a destroyer if you had a 10.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I'm also dating myself with how old we are. If we used to play the old formation where you'd have a stopper, where you'd have a guy in front of the defense,
yes.
I think that's what Perry Kitchen did, essentially. I mean, you need a guy like that every once in a while.
Raveloson can be that guy. We've seen him sit in there, and it's great to have whenever you have that ability. But, we're going to talk about Victor Vazquez because obviously he's on a list of people who possibly could not be coming back. And it's like, do you need him? Well, if you go out and get somebody who can fill a playmaking role, and I'm talking about big money DP signing here. This is not like, oh, this guy is good and he's on his way out. This guy still has many miles left in his legs and can play a 10 for 34 games and any competitions that you have. You need somebody like that. If you can put a 10 in there, then you don't have to rely on Victor Vazquez as much. Maybe he can be a spot player. Maybe you can sort of de-emphasize his role, which is something you're going to have to do with him and possibly Sacha Kljestan, and that's another person we can talk about as well. Let me get to the list because I want to do that, and that will help us talk about the other stuff. Go ahead.
So will we revisit Victor Vazquez?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. For sure. Okay. We will talk about that. So anyway,
then let's go through the list.
Yeah, the MLS Players Association surprised everybody sort of. I don't think they've done this before, but they put out some lists. Basically, they had 2022 free agents who are out of contract. So basically, people who are out of contract, they will be free agents. They had a list of people from the LA Galaxy that included Jonathan Dos Santos and Sacha Kljestan. That was on the out of contract 2022 free agents list. Okay. Then there's the 2022 free agents who have team options. So the Galaxy can pick up somebody's team options on this. It was Danilo Acosta. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Oh, O'Neal Fisher. And I even printed them out. So that way I could read them because it's really hard to read on all of my other things. Let's see. And Daniel Steres. Okay. So those were the 3 there. Now, what we were able to do is we put this information into our little spreadsheet. Then we figured out some other information and did some other things and crossed some T's and dotted some I's. And we were able to get a list, what we believe is the list of players, and there's 8 of them who are either out of contract or have an option year coming up. And it doesn't matter if they're free agents or not free agents. The MLS Players Association was trying to show just the free agents. Well, there's guys on this list who are not just free agents. So here are the guys who we know are either out of contract or have an option. Jonathan Dos Santos is out of contract. Victor Vazquez has an option at the end of this year, so the LA Galaxy can pick that up for the 2022 season. Daniel Steres has a club option. They can pick that up for the 2022 season. Sacha Kljestan is out of contract. O'Neal Fisher has an option. Danilo Acosta has an option. Augie Williams has an option. And Daniel Aguirre has an option. All right. By the way, Aguirre's Aguirre's contract is crazy. It's he has a guaranteed contract in 2021, and then he has 3 club options on that. Jonathan Bond has 2 club options after I think 3 years or 2 years, and then 2 club options. But he has a contract for next year as well. So these are the list of players. And by the way, this is probably a pretty definitive list of the actual space that the LA Galaxy have in terms of the guys that they're going to have to make decisions on. I'll remind everybody, there's 34 players on this roster right now. That includes Pipo Gonzalez, who still has a contract for next year. I know people still want to fall over there, grab their chest. I've known that for a really long time, so I'm not as upset about it, I think, as some people are. But looking at this, there are 8 players on this. There's 8 possibilities for movement on this, and I look on some of these and I say, okay, there's some decisions to be made. If you look at the total guaranteed salary, guaranteed compensation for these, it would be at $3.489 million, but $2 million of that is Jonathan Dos Santos as a designated player, and the rest of that. There was something really interesting on this, Eric. If you notice, on my charts, I have an MLS category, and that's how MLS categorizes players. So a TAM player, an international player, actually that's on the side, but a young DP, a DP, that type of thing. Well, if you'll notice on all 8 of these, the only designation I have is Jonathan Dos Santos as the designated player. There are no TAM players that I have right now.
Cap.
So it's all salary cap players, and that means also that more than likely the TAM funds the LA Galaxy are using right now will be in use for next year as well. So if you're looking like, oh, well, let's pick up a good TAM player, things would have to move around probably in order for them to pick up a TAM player of some sort because they're already being used on somebody else. So keep that in mind. So yeah, you're not talking giant expenditures here outside of the designated player spot. You're talking about salary cap guys, bread and butter guys who you sort of, you expect to be there, but maybe not starters. I mean, look on that list again.
Lunchbox guys, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what they call them?
Yeah. That's, I get it. Yeah. Like they work hard. They bring their lunchbox to work with them, right? The whole deal. You look at this and there's 8 players on here. Victor Vazquez is a starter sometimes. Daniel Steres can be a starter sometimes, although certainly not at the end of the season. Sacha Kljestan is a sub. O'Neal Fisher is a sub. Danilo Acosta is a sub. Augie Williams is a sub. Daniel Aguirre is a sub. These are not game changers. Outside of, by the way, I would say Sacha Kljestan, Victor Vazquez, and I should say Jonathan Dos Santos, but that hasn't been the case.
Well, yeah. Are we voting people off the island yet?
You can. Go for it.
All right. So Jonathan Dos Santos will start top of the list. I think that's a no-brainer. We've known this pretty much since, this season was coming, unless he did something miraculous. I think we say via con Dios, with the money that you're paying him and his contribution to the team, I think he's gone. And I think, fans and people who have been following the team are okay with him walking away, if not happy that he's walking away. So I think Jonathan Dos Santos, you're off the island. Victor Vazquez. So going back to what you were saying, if he's in a bench role, maybe that's something that the Galaxy can deal with. At the beginning of the season when he was brought in, that's what a lot of people were saying. Well, if he's not a DP, if he's coming off the bench, then maybe this is a good addition for the Galaxy. But you look at his salary, over $400,000 that goes towards the cap for someone who's a sometimes starter. And then you look at the games that he played, and I love Victor Vazquez. He, I think, has the best soccer mind on the team. He was able to put some pinpoint passes in to the players. You saw when it was on, but I just don't think, for a sometime starter, we said someone who's coming off the bench, that'd be great, but that's turned into something where we needed him to play more minutes. We needed him to be on the field more if the Galaxy was going to reach their full potential, and he couldn't do that. And that's because, of his age and where he was with injuries. I think he wasn't able to give you, 34 games. He wasn't able to give you 90 minutes each time that he was out on the field. So he couldn't give you that, but that's what the Galaxy needed. And he since he's not able to deliver that, I think you have to part ways and look for someone else who can fill that role. So to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you go over the DP who can be your playmaker and bring the same mind that Vasquez brings in, then I think, we can be okay with him walking away. So it all depends on what the succession plan is, to get him going. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Victor Vazquez averaged about 48 minutes per game, by the way. So, I mean,
wow.
That's actually a lot whenever you consider that he was a guy that and
he missed a lot of games. That's true. When you think about the averages. Yeah,
28 games played, Eric. He didn't miss that many games. 28 games played, 21 starts. 17 times he got subbed off, right? 1,632, but he's averaging 48 minutes on a guy who is 34 years old, right? I mean, even, by the way, Sacha Kljestan is another interesting one. If we drop down to, and we can come back to Daniel Steres, but Sacha Kljestan is really interesting. He's 36, right? I mean, he just turned 36 in September, right? So he will be 37 next September. And here's the guy who had a 1-year contract. He was sticking around. He was probably the lifeblood of this team down the stretch. And, I have to look up his stats too, but it would be very difficult for me to say, okay, I understand. You don't want to bring it. You maybe you want to move on from Victor Vazquez. Maybe you want to move on from Sacha Kljestan. Now replace those guys in the locker room and replace those guys on the field. And who are you going to get for that money to be able to find those guys again, because you need those guys. You need something like those guys. So, I know people always want to talk about the soccer field and it's the most important thing, and I will tell you that off the field and in the locker room can sometimes be more or certainly equally as important whenever we look at that.
That's where I could end up sounding like a crazy person by saying you need to get rid of Victor Vasquez, but you're going to hold on to a 38-year-old or a 37-year-old Sacha Kljestan by the time he comes around next season. I think but with Sacha, I think you got what you expected. You knew he wasn't going to start all the games. You knew he was going to be coming in on a bench support role and to, maybe close games out or play, a less important role. And I think he filled that role perfectly this season. I think he did exactly what he was brought in to do. And so with that, I didn't have any problem with Kljestan this season. I think he met the expectation.
Do you want
go for it.
Okay, 31 games played.
Yeah, that's more than actually what I expected.
Right. Okay, 13 starts. Okay, only got subbed
That's
off.
about right.
Only got subbed off 8 times because he comes in the second half and doesn't get it. 1,394 minutes, so he averaged 41 minutes per game over 34 games. I just divided by 34. Technically, it's higher than that because of the games he actually played.
Okay. See, now it's all clicking on why those numbers are so low. Got it.
Right. So, I mean, you can sort of put it's like Chicharito, right? Yep. We were sort of talking about him beforehand, and just to sort of go sidetrack on it, it's like, okay, so if you get Chicharito around 2,000 minutes, right, which is right around 60 minutes a game, that's what you can expect. So for 34 games, averaging 60 minutes a game, that's what you can expect from him. Now, what it should be is that he plays at 90 minutes and gets days off on occasion where he doesn't have, maybe he doesn't play the midweek games. But the LA Galaxy have to be good enough to not do that because
who's going to fill in those roles? Yeah, exactly.
And
who do you have?
Otherwise,
who's the next man up?
Otherwise, it's Chicharito, and you're hoping he doesn't get injured. I mean, can you write? And by the way, he has a contract for next year. He's not going anywhere. You want him to be back because he did have success scoring, but you're definitely worried about his durability. And so, if you're Greg Vanney, you have to look at that and say, okay, if 2,000 minutes is my cap, how do I manage him in a way that works for him and other people? So. Yeah. That was one of the things that you have to look at, in all these things. Yeah.
The final thing I'll say with Kljestan, and I think we got a little bit of a hint of it with one of his post-game interviews where he talked about working with some of the academy boys, kind of getting into some of the coaching and picking Vanney's brain with some of those things. If you're bringing him back, you're basically bringing in an assistant coach who could be on the field sometimes. I think that's the role he fills. And so from a soccer perspective, like on the field, strictly on the field, maybe it's time to let Kljestan go. You don't know if he, what's the problem with some of these contracts? Sometimes they look okay on that year, and then you say, well, can you come back? Can they do it again? And they're another year older, more miles, more stress, and they can't duplicate that. So do you bring him back and risk him not being able to do it again?
Right.
Probably not. But if you're getting that assistant coach, you're getting that person who's going to have some of those intangible things that the Galaxy really needed this season. But it's unfortunate because they missed the playoffs. They maybe didn't, get tucked into it, or maybe, this was that slap in the face that some of them needed to see. Maybe whatever, Kljestan was doing didn't land. But that's where it gets into the wishy-washy territory because he's making less money than Vasquez, taking up less.
Can I make you a deal? Can I make you a deal on Kljestan?
Yeah, okay. Go for it.
I'm going to make you a deal on Kljestan. Let's bring him. His guaranteed compensation for this year was $250,000, rounded up. Okay, $250,000. What if I told you that you could pay Sacha Kljestan $130,000?
That's what I mean. I don't know what the assistants make. I'm assuming it's in that neighborhood.
Hold on.
You're bringing on an assistant coach who can give you minutes.
I'm gonna make it better. In MLS, there's a rule. You can have a player coach. They've had him before, but there's a rule that says that the coaching duties can't account for more than 50% of the salary. So you can pay him $150,000 or $130,000, and then pay him as a coach whenever you realize that he has coaching duties as well. So now, for $150,000, are you going to bring Sacha Kljestan back?
Yes.
Okay. So I mean,
for that price and for what you get off the field, yes,
absolutely. And that's why it could make sense. I mean, here's the thing with Victor Vasquez is that him and Greg Vanney are the same person. So you have Victor Vasquez on the field who basically knows everything that Greg Vanney is trying to do with things. And is that worth $440,000? I
also want to say that out loud. That wanting to keep Sacha Kljestan at 150 and wanting to get rid of Victor Vasquez, I am fully aware Victor Vasquez brings you a lot more on the soccer field, brings you better touch, brings you more cohesion in the midfield, and yes, I want to just say that out loud, that I'm not saying the Kljestan is worth keeping because he's a better player than Vasquez.
36-year-old Sacha Kljestan.
It's not the fact. That's
36-year-old.
not true.
36-year-old Sacha Kljestan, 34-year-old Victor Vazquez. These are the decisions that have to be made. Daniel Steres, 31 years old. Listen, I think the LA Galaxy might be able to, if I'm them, I exercise the option. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you. I had heard that Daniel Steres had a contract for next season. So the Galaxy could have already picked up his option for this next season, and at almost $400,000, that's expensive if you're not going to start the guy. But correct. I will say this as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the LA Galaxy pick up his option and then trade him somewhere to try to get value out of him in some other way. And so just sort of keep that in mind as you're going for this. I don't have any inside information on this. I'm just saying that if that's true, I'm trying to figure out sort of what it feels like Greg Vanney has moved away from Dan Steres. And if that's the case, then there's no point in keeping somebody who has $440,000 and you have an option on him. Now, the only thing is that somebody in this league wants a 31-year-old American center back. He'll probably go to Nashville and be on the league's best defense next to Dave Romney and Walker Zimmerman.
I was going to say there's a guy, who plays in New England who, maybe is familiar with Dan Steres and maybe a supporter shield winning team could use the veteran experience of Daniel Steres.
I'm sure he'll go to Nashville, and then Nashville's in the Western Conference next year, so you get to face Dave Romney and Dan Steres.
Oh,
so
that'd be fantastic.
Wonderful. So that's it. O'Neal Fisher. I mean, listen.
Let me go back to Dan Steres. So with that, I think the most important thing there is you're right. What's the end goal with Dan Steres? Because I would have him. I'd love to bring him back because what was I saying? The problem was in the defense consistency. It was always different. You weren't sure what you were getting. Daniel Steres has been with the club a long time. He's he's been a good steward of the club. He's been, follows directions, does what you want him to do. And so I think, you want to bring him back in. But then you look at the price and you say, well, if he's not going to be starting and he's going to take up, that much of the salary cap, is this the best move for him? So maybe it's in his best interest to go look and to be a starter at a different club if that's, going to be an option for him. So to come back and to be, a super sub or to fill in a spot gap, maybe that's not where we need him right now. So if the end goal with Dan Steres, if he's not going to be the starting center back, then, what's the purpose here? What are we trying to do? So that's the only question that I have. I'd love to have him back, but again, at that price, and if he's not going to be the starter, then that's not what we need.
I'm just looking at all the defenders on the list as well. Julian Narajo, there's questions marks about whether he'll be back next year. For right now, I think he will be. I've softened a little bit, and it's not because he hasn't been outstanding. I'm just waiting to see if it's going to happen. It might happen in the summer, and it might not happen in the winter. And I'm trying to sort of gauge those things between themselves. I've
also gotten colder on Julian Narajo, and I think Kevin kind of summed up my feelings as well on Monday, that we thought this guy was a shoo-in for Europe. And I think he's in goal. He will be in Europe, sooner than later. But at the same time, I think he probably does have possibly another season with the LA Galaxy, because I don't think he's fully developed yet. And I think if you do send him, he's going to go to a team where he's going to ride the bench? Is he going to go to a team where they put him out on loan, or do you keep him at home? And he has developed over the past few seasons. So you can, I think the expectation is fair that he can stay here and can develop even more with his time here at the Galaxy.
Segu Koulibaly's in there, obviously. O'Neal Fisher. I don't think he comes back. It'll have to depend on what they think they're doing with Araujo, right? Because if Araujo's going to play, then you need somebody like O'Neal Fisher to back up and play the quote-unquote garbage minutes that Araujo doesn't get, right? Yeah. Because he's going to be your starter. He's going to play 34 games. That's the idea. Or you go out and find somebody else. Danilo Acosta's a defender. Yep. Jalen Neal is a defender. Marcus Ferkranis is a defender, right? You're talking about center backs and that they can come in here. So that's why it starts to feel like Dan Steres is I was going to say superfluous. We'll just pretend that I know what that word is.
And it's also as fans of Big Dan Steres on this show, I think it's what's best for him. He's been I'm not going to say jerked around, but he's just kind of been left on the back burner when, called up as that late night booty call when you need him. He deserves to have someone put the ring on it. And so, I think it's in his best interest to end up somewhere where he's
Dave Romney found his forever home.
There you go.
He was also the booty call, and Romney now there as well. So Sacha Kljestan is O'Neal Fisher is a question mark. Danilo Acosta. I mean, the problem is Acosta hasn't played. Now, do you want to hear something that's crazy? How old do you think Danilo Acosta is?
Well, I'm looking at the chart. It says 23.
Oh, darn. I gave it to you. That's right.
I would have guessed like 2021, though. I thought he was a little bit younger.
I thought he was older. So, I mean, that's sort of where I was at.
I know he's been around a long time. Yeah, because he's been with Orlando. Was he with RSL? Was that correct?
Yes, he was with, I think, RSL. Yes.
But
yes.
I think I haven't seen enough of him, and I'd like to see more of him. So I think with Acosta, I would keep Fisher. I think I've seen enough what I needed to see from Fisher. I don't think he brought more to this club. I think he was more of a liability than he was a help to the team. And I think you could find guys on the waiver wire. You can call up guys from G2 who are going to give you the same thing or better, because I think what Fisher brought was mediocre at best, when he was at his best, and you didn't use him a lot anyway. So I think you can fill that spot. So unfortunately, I would let go of Fisher.
It's fine. I mean, I'm certainly not going to argue against watching his last performances, that type of thing. Doesn't really make me want to argue for him in any particular way. The other thing is Hamelinen is on a loan, and you would expect that loan to be done this year, and he goes back.
Also
so you have a left back issue again. Jorge Villafana was your left back, and probably the best defensive left back the Galaxy had. He also got up and down the left side a lot more than I ever gave him credit for. So I was
going to say, don't sell that short. He did his job just fine, getting up and putting in those crosses when he needed to.
And I was trying to just sort of look through here, but he's at $486,000. Again, you're looking at a guy who doesn't take up an international spot, right? A domestic defender costs a lot of money. I think that's something that everybody should keep in mind. If you look at Dan Stairs, you look at the guys who are the domestic defenders, that's sort of where it goes.
I'm still upset that I didn't get to be Jorge Villafana's neighbor.
So
it still bugs me out.
Well, you
was
moved.
So close.
Well, you moved.
I know.
So
really disappointed me. But oh well. I think he's similar to Chicharito in the regard when he's on the field, he delivered, and so for that you give him the chance and you want him back on the field. But the issue was staying on the field for the long part of the season.
I want to make an argument for Nico Hamelinen, and because I see everybody trashing him in here, right? And I agree up to a certain point. I agree, but I want to make an argument for him. If you're Greg Vanney and you find 3 center backs that you really like, okay, and you want to start playing a 3-man back line, and you want some wing backs, right? Well, you couldn't really do better, quite honestly. And I'll say this: Hamelinen was decent enough going forward that he is somebody who you would put in that formation who can still play some defense, right? You don't have to just sell out offense. It's like Julian Narajo is probably a better wing back, quite honestly, than he is just a right back.
I agree 100%. Yeah, so, I think if you have Stairs, Koulibaly, and Williams back there, then Hamelinen, there's a place for Hamelinen and even Villafana on that team, because when you shift, I think Julian Narajo essentially becomes a winger, because now you can shift kind of shift your defense and get the 4 in the back if you need it. So I agree with you. I think if depending on what Vanney plans to do moving forward, Hamelinen, I liked what he brought going forward.
Right.
Defensively was where the issues were.
Exactly. And so you can't but you knew, again, it's almost like sometimes, and Bruce was really good at this, right? Bruce knew what he was going to get from certain people, and then he would plan around that whenever it would be a problem. And so with Hamelinen, if you put him in a 5-man back line, or if you put him in that sort of wing back and push him up into the midfield, he's not responsible defensively as much as he would be if he was out on the side. And so you could put him in that, but that's a spot situation. I would like to point out that we do not know the terms of the QPR loan. That was kept secret. I think QPR asked to keep it secret. I don't know why, but that was it.
Dennis mentioned that at the live show that he was not allowed to disclose
yeah.
what those terms were.
Right. And so, which is weird. I've actually gotten terms on most guys. I've been trying to go through. By the way, I could just flat out ask players what their contract status is, like, and go, because, and I'm like, isn't this weird that I have to ask you this? I go, but they don't give us this information. A lot of times they're starting to now. So I was able to go back to press releases and grab a whole bunch of this as well. I found something interesting though, and I asked you this so you don't get a guess, but I said, okay, so what's the average age of this roster? There's 34 players on this roster. That's 4 more than technically you're supposed to have, but there's loans down, which sort of made that happen. They have 10 internationals, but there was loans down and loans out that allowed them to be compliant with the 8 spots that they had, that type of thing. So you look at this, and I said, what was the average age? And your first guess was like 27 for 27, a second, right?
So
yeah.
my brain went Sacha Kljestan, Victor Vazquez, Chicharito, Sebastian Lletget. I was going, 27. And then I thought, because I followed up pretty quickly before you corrected me and gave me the answers. I said, wait, we have, the Jalen Neals, the Adam Saldana's, Julian Araujo's. So it's going to skew lower. Kevin Cabral is still young. So then I said 24. So what's the correct answer?
The correct answer is basically 25. It's 24.97 is the average age of the LA Galaxy. Now, I'm going to tell you this. The median, by the way, is 24, just in case you wanted to know what the median age is. So 24 years old is the median age. There are only 2 players, by the way, who are actually at the average, right? So 25. Basically, I rounded up 24.97 to 25, right? I think we can all understand that. So there's only 2 players who are 25 years of old age, and I asked you who they were, and in fact, it was funny because you said, "Oh, well, there's nobody who's even 25." There's nobody. Yeah. Like, how many people are 25 on the team? I'm like, well, yeah.
The question was, who do we have that's in their prime? And I think that was a separate conversation.
That was
what is a player's prime? So if you want to,
I will get to that. Yeah,
start sharing. What's the player's prime in the chat? Guessing. Drop it in. What's the age range?
Only 2 players who are 25, so technically at the average age. That's Samuel Grandsir and Sega Coulibaly are both 25 years old, at least for the time being, as I did this today. There were 5 players who are 24 years old. Again, we talk about the median. That makes sense. 5 players at 24 years old. There are 7 players that are 30 or older currently on this roster. 7. There are 15 players who are 23 or younger on the roster. I want everybody just to understand how much of a gigantic shift that is,
and the chasm in between. The fact that there's no bridge. It's either I'm bottle feeding my kids, or I'm still drinking out of the bottle here at home. So there's not a lot of middle ground.
I'm feeling 22. Feel the Berms keeps putting the lyrics up there, and I'm like, I just want to sing. So we talked about it, and so I was sort of saying, okay, so what is considered prime, right? And I think you're going to get a bunch of different answers in this, right?
26, 27,
24 to 27, right? That type of thing. Okay, so we basically did 25 to 28, right? Mm-hmm. So if you do that, there are just 5 players who are technically in their prime, and obviously you have the 2 Grandsir and Coulibaly are in their prime. I'm trying to go through all these real quick because I didn't write it down. Yeah,
it's on the higher end of it, 28. Nick DePuy, Jonathan Bond, Sebastian Lletget, maybe a little bit past prime.
29.
And I think that's kind of where we were starting to decide. Maybe, some people can have extended primes, and obviously this is different for every player. But I think generally speaking, 28, 29 is maybe the other side of the mountain.
Jonathan Bond can be in his prime for the next 10 years as a goalkeeper, right?
Goalkeepers, yeah. Who was it? Fabian Barthez? Didn't he play till he was 41, 42?
Yeah,
43.
You can get up there as a goalkeeper. And by the way, I would say that if you look at Jonathan Bond, he is extremely happy to be in Southern California right now. I don't know if that changes if the Galaxy suddenly tank next year. Which, by the way, history shows us, at least recent history, that's what happens next year. Is that they tank. They don't get better. They don't continue the improvement. Which is crazy to think about because I feel like we're mostly sitting here saying there were improvements this year and we're expecting improvements next year, right? The only problem in next year is that it's not just make the playoffs next year. It's be competitive for an MLS Cup. You had your one year. Now be competitive. Be a top 3.
If you are saying this was a rebuilding year, we brought in 15 new players, 17 new players. How many new players did we bring in? We brought in a lot of
17.
new players.
17, but I've seen 15 as well. I haven't done the full count.
Okay,
yeah.
We brought in 17 new players. That's a whole squad that you can suit up on game day. Nearly a whole squad there. So this is your rebuilding year. Next year, you're not going to bring in 17 new players, and it's not going to be rebuilding. So you're right. You can't say, they're still learning Vanny's system. All these, a lot of new players. That's not going to fly next year. So next year, I think making the playoffs has to be an absolute given as an expectation, given how close they were this season, and 2, being at Vanny's second year and the number of players, there's just not going to be as much of a turnaround. So, the expectations will be much higher next season.
Yeah, and so when you look at, I will say this, I believe that the Galaxy, just in terms of their overall age, if you give everybody a year older, everybody gets a year older next year, and you get a little bit more experience. You get guys like Joveljic, who's young. You give him time, and I will continue to beat on this until they actually listen to me. And hopefully Galaxy players are listening. Hopefully there's at least one who can pass this along, that if I am, Dejan Joveljic and I am Kevin Cabral, I take my time off because I need some time off. Everybody needs a break. Take a little blow. You're like, okay, I'm good. I feel better. Stretch it out a little bit. And then you pack all your stuff in your backpack, and you go over to Chicharito's house and you knock nicely on the door and you say, hey, I'm here to move in for the entire preseason, and I want to train with you every single day. That's all I want to do, because I feel this very sincerely is that I don't know that anybody worked harder in the offseason than Javier Chicharito Hernandez, and it showed on the field. So there's something there.
That's a perfect. We were all, I think we were making video montages, before the season of him working out, and it almost became like a joke. He's running, on the canyon, running by the Hollywood sign, doing sit-ups, and everyone's like, okay, relax, Chicharito. He was really kind of going out of his way and almost being performative in the work that he was putting in the offseason. But the proof was in the pudding. He delivered this season. He scored a lot of goals. He got off to a ridiculously hot start. So I'm 100% with you that if Cabral and Joveljic go, and if they don't say if they're moving in and I'm training with you, say, can you give me the number of the people that you used? Give me your chef, give me your trainer, and I want to get on the same regimen. I think they need a similar style. We've torn it down to the ground. So now we need to build it back up, because I know we hated on Cabral. I hated on Cabral. That I even, I was speaking with my dad via text, and I was like, I think my 6-year-old son can kick the ball just as hard as Kevin Cabral. I think there's something, that shot power, just for some reason it's not there. But there are other elements that it's there. It's there. I see flashes. There's something in there. Just like with Chicharito, we know he had a terrible 2020, but there's something in there. There's a goal scorer in there, and we saw it. We saw the instincts in front of goal. It's in there. And so I think the same thing with Joveljic. The results didn't happen this season, but there's something in there that can be unlocked. So they do need a break. But they also need to put in a lot of work in the offseason if they're going to fill in those shoes that they frankly didn't fill in this year.
You said shoes, Eric. Good job. Thank you for that. All right, little segue here. The LA Galaxy obviously had this collaboration with Adidas for the Gazelles, the Galaxy Gazelles. There was a network drop if you tried to do any of that. Basically, they had signed ones by Kobe Jones. They had the Friends and Family one, which is the alternate colorway, which, by the way, I do not have a single, promo picture of the Friends and Family one. I've seen them in other places, but I have over a gigabyte of pictures the Galaxy sent me on these, and the only picture I have is Efrain Alvarez showing up in them, which is why he's the only player you see in there in the Friends and Family, because I think that's actually the best colorway of the two.
I disagree. I think it's unique, and it's nice that it ties to those original teal colors, but the classic blue and white Gazelles, it's just perfection. Perfection.
These are, and I had pairs of Gazelles over and all that stuff. So
I've ruined a lot of suede on some Gazelles in my junior high days.
So the shoe, I think the shoe looks great. The whole deal. My reason for talking about it, one, is it drops, I think, on Friday. Actually, it may drop at the LA Team Store. I think people were saying that they were even going to line up and that type of thing. So you can Team Store. It should be. I think they're going to be available on Fanatics. There's some other places that you can go around, and they should have these shoes. And so they're not super limited like the network drop was, which sold out in 3 minutes. I think I told you, and they were charging $200 for the Friends and Family and $150 for the other ones, and they should be around $100, I believe, for the Galaxy Gazelles. Now, I don't think that the Friends and Family are available anywhere, at least not right now. The drop that I'm hearing right now is just this classic colorway, the classic Gazelle. It says Galaxy on it. There's some really nice details on it. It looks really good. Now, here's the thing that I see people complaining about, and they're saying, oh, well, you're trying to offer us a nice shiny object while you miss the playoffs. You're trying to give us these shoes to make us forget about it. Number one, let me be very clear, and I think we've been clear about this already before, Eric, which is you are allowed to vote with whatever means you have. If you want to go on Twitter and you want to say, hey, you should fire Chris Klein because of all these reasons, then you can do that, and you have the right to do that. If you want to vote with your wallet and say, I'm not going to renew my season tickets. If you want to renew your season tickets but complain about the LA Galaxy missing the play, you're allowed to do that too. Those are all perfectly reasonable things to do. If you want to complain about the front office and go buy these Galaxy Gazelles, you're allowed to do that, right? If you don't want to buy them because you're trying to teach them a lesson, you're allowed to do that as well. All right. So all of those things are allowed. I'm not gatekeeping here. All right. And I think people should stop trying to gatekeep that stuff as well.
I'll also say the Galaxy did not decide on Monday morning that they were going to release these shoes. They didn't,
that's the biggest,
and say, how can we design these and figure that? No, this has been something that was in the works. And I would imagine that they thought we're going to make the playoffs and we're going to push for these shoes. And it's going to be part of our marketing campaign, get everyone hyped up and excited, getting them to the stadium, getting kind of that camaraderie going. I think that's where they thought this was going, and it didn't land. Can you imagine
having a home playoff game showing up in your new Galaxy Gazelles?
Yeah.
That's where this should have been going. And by the way, LAFC has an Adidas shoe that was launching as well at the same time. It launched at the similar time. They also thought they were going to be in the playoffs in order to be able to wear these shoes and do it.
Well,
yeah.
They had moments that they were, I think it was more of a fair expectation to say that they were going to miss the playoffs. But when this was probably planned, which was probably
12 months,
2 years
months?
ago.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a long
18
time.
months ago. Yeah, that would work. Someone, no name just said, when are the Galaxy Crocs dropping? And
Yes.
I am all about the Galaxy Crocs if those ever come out. I know some people sell the little gibbets that go on there. And I was going somewhere with that and I got distracted by Galaxy Crocs. But yeah, where was I going with it?
I don't know.
Dang it, no name. You got me.
Yeah,
you got me.
That was it.
Here's my issue. If you're going to have an issue with the Galaxy shoes, here's my issue. The New York Red Bulls, as a season ticket member gift, gave their fans a custom Adidas shoe with the Red Bulls logo, and that was the season ticket member gift. I think this is something I've taken season ticket member surveys, and I know this is something that fans wanted. They've wanted a Galaxy specific shoe, and this is something that has been in the works. If you are having trouble selling season ticket memberships,
which they are,
if you want to entice people to buy tickets, having this as the season ticket member gift would be a home run knock out of the park, because you are appeasing the people who are giving money to the club directly. You are giving them that benefit. You are giving them something special for it. And it's part of that gift. There's people who spend between $300, and then depending on how many people they have in their family, maybe they're spending upwards of $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 a season. $10,000 a season. What's a pair of shoes for your guests? So I think that's where the miss is to me. This is something that would have been a great opportunity as a season ticket member gift instead of a T-shirt or a hat. Love the T-shirt, love the hat, but a pair of shoes is really
flip-flops. The flip-flops, the speaker that didn't really work, the earbuds that didn't really work.
The speaker literally that broke the second day I had it. Yeah, so thank you, JBL Audio or whatever that was, J Labs.
Don't impugn somebody on here that's gonna. I'm sure they were going to be a sponsor, and now they're not going to be.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, don't. Hey, J Lab Audio, don't send me another pair.
Yeah, that's right. I don't want it.
Yeah.
No, that's sort of the whole idea. Again, I am 100% behind anybody who wants to protest with their wallet. I think it's a great way to do it. Go do it. So you can go do that however you want. I just there's something missing in all of this. I think the shoes look great. I have no issue with the shoes and how they look and the details on them and everything else that are sort of there. And so I'm 100% in terms of the design of those shoes and how they've sort of been rolled out. I think they look great. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those. By the way, Vera says, how about a Bond goalkeeper's jersey? I mean, I can't. I want to be very clear with you.
Conversation.
I want to be very clear with you. I have had this discussion with Jonathan a couple times about like, how can I help you to get this done? Like, how can we push this? Because I know people want it. And the worst part about it is, Jonathan Bond wants it for people too, because it's everybody's dream to see your shirt. You're on somebody
wearing it in the stadium. Yeah.
They're pointing to it whenever you come out. Like, I love you, man. Like that is a dream. And they're depriving him of that dream right now.
And it's bizarre because I know they sold goalkeeper kits. That's something that they used to do. I know when David Bingham was the keeper, they sold, the pink and the blue and the black. They had those different versions. So they can do it. And then now all you need to do is just make sure that the team store can press a name on there. So I don't think they're that far away. It's just a matter of...
I'm hoping they correct it next year. Yeah. Again, a new home kit next year as well. So we've heard some things. I think I've heard no sash. The sash is going away. But there are some patterns out there from Adidas that possibly will look like what the LA Galaxy sort of pattern is going to be. I think that's it.
And then the one last thing that I'll mention is I also see some things in the chat. Well, forget about the shoes. Let's win. Let's not worry about how stylish we're going to look. It should be on the field only. If you only care about the 90 minutes on the field and that's all you care about is those minutes, and you don't care about the LA Galaxy, anything outside of that, more power to you. But it's a totally different conversation. You can still want to win and also still want to have good looking shoes and good looking kits and make sure that you're and stuff that like, it's okay. It's okay to want the shoes and to make, hey, this is stylish. This looks great. I can represent my club on my feet. That was the one thing I was missing. I got the underwear, I got the socks, I got the shirt. I didn't have the shoes. And now I have that final Tetris piece that I can slide in there. So it's okay. We can like shoes, we can like the jerseys and still want to win. It's not just the 90 minutes. Yes, We want them to win in those 90 minutes. But supporting a club is everything else that goes on top of that as well. It's being a part of the supporters groups. It's going to the meetups. It's making podcasts. It's all, it's all those other things that go around it as well. It's not just, yes, we want to win, but there's other elements of the club as well.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna blow your mind, might blow everybody's mind in the chat room as well. This can still be fun. All right. And I know it didn't end. Fun, yeah. I know it didn't end the way that you thought it was. I didn't end the way I thought it was going. I thought I'd still be covering soccer. I told my wife, I'm like, haha, because she was sort of like, I could be done with this season because obviously it takes me away from my family. I don't get to spend, so she ends up having to watch a kid a lot. So I understand that and I get it. And she's amazing. She lets me do it. She goes, but I could be over with this. I could have the season. I'm like, nope, not going to happen. They're going to the playoffs. Hey, it may only be 1 or 2 games, but they're going to the playoffs, so the whole deal. And I'm surprised as well. But it can be fun. It can be fun, and remember to have fun. And I know, guess what? I remember 2009. I remember 2008. I remember, going and getting close. By the way, I don't know that there's a worse feeling in the world than getting to an MLS Cup and then missing it, and then not winning.
I will say that here's everyone's favorite part when we compare ourselves to professional athletes.
Yes.
Making it to a final and losing is worse than missing out on the playoffs. I can tell you that because you're right there. You can taste it, you can smell it. And to have that taken away from you, that hurt is so much worse than just saying, we missed the line. We didn't have a chance. We're done. Like you're over it, go golfing the next week later. Yeah, it stings. But when you're right there, you can see it. You can taste it. That hurt is so much more.
2011. Yeah. 2011 was a release of energy that had been building up since 2009. Whenever they missed out, 2010, win a supporter shield and then crash out of the playoffs. 2011, win an MLS Cup, not satisfied. 2012, win an MLS Cup, not satisfied. 2013, got a little tired, you could tell. 2014, that's the one that they wanted. That was the last time you really remember these teams. And by the way, Bruce Arena had 2015 and 2016. Neither of those teams look like championship teams. Just in the way it goes. But you look at the difference between 2015 and 2016 is the Galaxy closed their eyes and made the playoffs. It wasn't a question mark, and for Bruce it was never a question mark. That's how it was going to go.
Yeah.
And then you look at what happened in 2017, and that completely went away. Remember that I think Chris Klein took over in 2014, if I remember correctly. So for the last championship the LA Galaxy had, I believe he was president at that time with Bruce in there and doing stuff, if I remember correctly. And then get 2014, 2015, 2016. 2017 was a huge shift for a club that had usually gone out and tried to make big splashes. And
it was a philosophy. It was a philososy change that we're glad that they reverted out away from. They pivoted away from it. Yeah.
But let's be clear: the injuries from 2017 were still being felt. Throughout, even 2021 and possibly into 2022. So, it's a difficult one to sort of swallow this year. There's a lot of roster things that are going to change. There's a lot of question marks. There's going to be the 8 players that we talked about tonight, and then there's probably going to be other stuff that is also going to happen in and out. We'll start to talk about, designated players and rumors and all that sort of things as they sort of go around. I think the first thing that's going to happen for everybody is we're going to find out whether or not Dennis DeClosa is staying. I would imagine we talked about it on Monday. I would imagine next week we probably have a resolution to that. If it's not public knowledge, it will be private knowledge that it has happened, whatever's going to happen, whether he's going to stay, whether he's going to go, that type of thing. And so we will keep looking and sort of tracking that down. But that's going to be the first thing. Then the question is, what did the LA Galaxy do? Do they go out and get another general manager?
Well, and the question is, with these options, does Dennis have his mind made up on these options, and does the club go with that? Or if he is stepping away or there, whatever is happening happens, are they bringing someone else in, or who's making those decisions? Is Klein making those decisions? Is Vanny making those decisions? So it just opens up those questions a little bit more as far as what exactly is going on behind the scenes. So, we're already there. We're already there in the off season, thinking about what next steps are. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, there should be an off season schedule that comes out here pretty soon. The Galaxy will have to sort of announce their option declines and their option pickups and sort of the out of contract players. We're starting to know some of them already, but the Galaxy will do that. We are expecting the Galaxy are putting together a call possibly next week, I think. Where we'll get to do some end of season stuff and talk to some of the guys at the end of the season. There's a large list whenever I looked at the list of people who were requested. So I would think that there's like 10 or 12 people on that list off the top of my head.
And then aren't there exit interviews as well? Don't they usually go in, clean out their lockers and
So that'll be with Greg, and we'll hear about that. It'll be with Greg and whoever the GM is, or with Dennis if he's there, however that ends up. But they're doing. But by the way, that those interviews and those ideas of what's happening this season have probably already started in some of that stuff. But yeah, I would expect next week they're out of training, that they're not training anymore. I think that's my expectation. We'll see if that sort of plays out. But we are expecting. It used to be exit interviews for the press was we would go stand outside the locker room, and as the guys would clean up, they would come out with their bag of stuff in there, and they would stop and talk to us for like 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'd let them go. And so you could basically talk to everybody as they came out and do that. We're not going to get that opportunity. So you would have to imagine that we're going to get some, but not everybody. And I think if I looked at who the media has requested so far, there's a lot of focus on guys who have question marks about next year, right? Jonathan Dos Santos is on that list. Victor Vazquez is on the list. Sacha Kljestan is on the list. Even Sebastian Lletget, even though he has a contract into 2023. So there's guys who you're going to question.
Think they're hinting at a farewell tour? Is that the to say their goodbyes?
What?
Is that generally protocol? Is that why they have those players? Or
no, I mean we make those requests, so that's the media request. Right. So it's just us sort of saying who has question marks about next year.
But I think if they don't put those players forward, that also says a lot. Also,
yeah, I mean
if that's someone who's heavily requested, and it's not a
we'll see how it goes at Zoom, and so it's sort of like how can you fit everybody in? I imagine some of these guys are going to like Zoom from home, and it's going to be one of those because they're basically going to be done at the stadium, so they'll Zoom from home. We'll try to figure it out, and then we'll have as much of that as we can. We'll try to get some interviews lined up as well coming up in the next couple of weeks from players, from coaches, that type of thing, before they all break and take off for a little while, because that is definitely going to happen. But I'm hoping that Greg Vinny can come on the show and talk to us for a little bit, and that would be a good sort of way to wrap up some things at the end of the year and ask him all the questions we want to see. So we'll see how that goes. So that's sort of the plan. Right now, we're still planning on doing 2 shows a week. We'll see if that... Kevin asked about Monday because he's traveling with the U.S. men's national team trying to cover their qualifiers and stuff. Like, he's like, well, I'll be in Jamaica. He goes, but I'll be available. I'm like, I don't know if there's going to be anything to talk about because it's just Thursday and then there's a weekend, which is an international break. And so there's not even going to be a lot of MLS stuff. So we'll see what happens on Monday. But for right now, Monday, planning on having a show. We'll see if that continues. All right. So that's sort of where we stand. Eric, anything else you want to touch on before we go?
No, just Força Portugal. So again, Portugal, we're in the international window. All to play for. I am extremely nervous. Portugal has 1 game. They win, and they're in the World Cup. Tell me if you've heard that before.
Yeah.
Teams that I support, all they need to do is win, and they're in. So versus Serbia on Sunday, we'll see how that goes. So extremely nervous, but I like Portugal's chances.
Didn't look great against Ireland today. Just gonna say
it was a meaningless. The outcome of that game did not matter. It's Sunday for all the marbles. I mean, it looked like it didn't matter.
Cristiano Ronaldo was out there playing. If it doesn't matter, you have Cristiano Ronaldo playing. We'll see how it goes. But I watched some Zlatan playing with Sweden too. So I watched 2 really bad games today during the international break. I was like, oh my God, Zlatan. By the way, I would just like to throw this out, and I know people will disagree with me and say I'm crazy, but Galaxy got rid of Zlatan Ibrahimovic at the right time. They got rid of him 1 year early, and that is where you always want to be. So
and going back to 2016, the Steven Gerrard, the Robbie Keane, the wheels falling off. They had a good team. They had the right core. Just 1 year too long. So when you think about your Victor Vazquez, your Sacha Kljestan, it's enticing. Maybe they can do it again and contribute, but maybe that's when the wheels fall off and you're stuck with some key players on the bench when you need them most in the playoffs.
All right, we got to go because Taylor Swift tweeted out that her album dropped. So
oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's time.
Let's get to Spotify.
Yeah, we
hit the alarm.
We have to go. So tell people where they can find you. Let's go.
All right, as always, you can find me on Twitter at HammerEV. You could also find me on Instagram at Galaxy Profile. That's Galaxy PROFOUL.
All right, if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. We'll start to have some coverage. We're trying to drop all of our rosters on there in some interactive way that you can use. Haven't figured that out yet. When we do, you'll be able to search the rosters and all the information we've gathered and make your own decisions about who you're keeping, who's going away, all that fun stuff. So check that out. All right, that does it for Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira. I'm Josh, Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Narajo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.